Hello and welcome to Lightning Talks. These are a super quick series of talks done by people attending the conference, 5 to 7 minutes on a topic of their choosing. This is where people come on up, get to show off whatever it is they're interested in. I'd like to start off with Sam. Are you good to go? Yeah. Oh, Ben. See, this is how it goes. Ay, ay, ay. Now I got to find your thing. Come on up, come on up.
It was on your USB drive.
I know. I don't know how to close this window. There we go. Sorry, Tom.
No worries. Cool. Hi, I'm Ben. Thank you for having me. This is about a party I threw with some friends a few years back. So first party was Rocket Man. Hey, there we go. Cool. We're a bunch of engineers out in LA, so we throw a lot of desert parties, and we wanted to throw one where people could build something out in the desert while they were out there having fun. So for the first Rocket Man, the plan was go to the desert, assemble SD's model rocket kits, and then launch them all together. So we went out into the desert, assembled some model rocket kits, had some fun, and then launched a bunch of rockets all at once. It was really cool. So then the next year we was like, cool, we got to do the same thing but bigger, better. So we were like, cool, Rocket Man number 2. This one, let's get a bunch of balloons, let people learn how to solder and assemble the circuit boards out in the desert. The circuit boards will light up inside the balloons. We'll suspend a bunch of balloons up in the air, and then we can have a dance party under these flashing, glowing balloons. It'll be really cool, have fun, and then make something a little extra flashy for the finale. So we designed a little circuit board. Here's the high-level system diagram I made at the bar last night. A bunch of 100 balloons in a 10 by 10 grid hanging from a wire. 8266 to connect to Wi-Fi, get packets with like what the RGB value should be so I can control them all from my laptop. And then drive a couple of NeoPixels, powered by AA's, they last 12 hours, throw it in a big whitish balloon, hang them up, it works great. So here's what the board looks like. There's a few surface mount components that we soldered on ourselves in someone's apartment, and then you can see there's the through-hole components with labels, arrows. So those are the parts that we expected everyone out in the desert to solder. There are a lot of people who had never soldered before, so it was like a learning experience for everyone. Really tried to keep it really simple, and then after they built them, I quality controlled them, and then they installed in the balloon, hung them, and we had a good time. So here's like our assembly line in the kitchen, building a bunch of the boards, soldering, reworking, testing. This is a materials engineer, not really ever soldered before, and we had him doing the surface mount work. Just whole process. Started building up the boards, and then eventually fully completed a few of them, did a small test batch. I had enough of the software working at this point that I could send some basic lighting commands, and we're like, cool, 6 boards on the Wi-Fi network, this will scale, excellent. You can see where I'm going. So I was in charge of the software, so I wrote almost all of it for this project. There's no pictures, I'm sorry, software's not that exciting. But the idea is use an off-the-shelf lighting control protocol, so I could like send commands via a little Python script, or I could use off-the-shelf software that could do like fun chases and effects and try and make something look professional. The ESP8266s were just running the wiring from Arduino, fairly simple, and then if I sent a special code to them, they would ignite a fuse at the end, which would then throw a bunch of sparks, and it would look cool on the balloons. And the destruct code I sent was just the sequence, I'm sorry, Dave and ASCII. So went out into the desert, found this nice little canyon where we have like some tall rocks that we can hang the wires from around us, but like nice and clear underneath. So like we're trying to be very conscious of fire, so keep everything away from the bushes. Start rigging up the steel wire grid. You can see the wire across, and then the cross lines, those are what we would hang the balloons from. Lots of wire, and then as people started showing up in the desert, we gave them soldering irons, and they had instructions on the tables, and they would solder together. They would buy a kit and solder it together and put all the through-hole components in. And people were having a lot of fun just doing soldering in the desert. Quality control, cleanliness standards, absolutely. So yeah, we just had a lot of fun during the day, building these kits, and then we, as the sun started going down, started stringing up the balloons, raising them into the sky. You can see they were already lighting up because we had to put the batteries in before we flew them, of course. And then these are like some of the best pictures I had, which is sad, but you can just see like grid of balloons. They would flash different colors, move around a lot. Yep, we had a good time dancing under them. This is from a later party. We reused some of them with some extra balloons, and you could just see what they look like, slightly more static. And there's some people doing post spinning with fire. It's a desert party, good time. But then I said there was a finale. So we put these little electronic fuses on them, and because they're big balloons, they're big balls of gas, and we were like, cool, what if they exploded at the finale? Or they combusted, not exploded, no shockwave. So first we were like, cool, hydrogen's good for burning, and then maybe they'll float a bit. Turns out it's hard to chemically produce hydrogen at rate and at pressure, and you can't buy hydrogen and transport it unless you have a license to do so, so no one will sell it to you. But you can go to the store and just buy propane canisters. And that works just fine, and the balloons can be suspended from the grid instead of floating, so we bought some propane, and then when we inflated the balloons, we didn't fill them with air, we filled them with propane. So then the idea is like, send lights, and then on command it could just be like, and send the destruct command to this balloon, and then have it flare up in the sky. Unfortunately, a lot of the balloons were struggling connecting to the Wi-Fi network, so we had to get a stick with a little like candle at the end of it and ignite a lot of them manually, which was still a lot of fun. And afterwards, I managed to personally rescue like 60 of the nodes from the desert, and they're sitting in a box somewhere at home that I couldn't find. But I brought one with me, so if you're curious, I can show you the nodes. It's in my bag, and I like got all the tape off them, unwrapped them, and so I just have like way too many 8266s that I know what to do with. Used them to throw a Halloween party once. That was great. So some lessons learned that I want to pass on to everyone. Mistakes were made. Don't use Wi-Fi for this kind of application. Cheap routers can't accept 100 clients trying to connect to them all at once. And even though I was like, oh yeah, I'll just send one big broadcast packet with every node's data, and it'll just index into it because it knows its ID and pull out its value. Turns out it's still a unicast Wi-Fi packet to every device, so I'm spamming the network anyways with packets way bigger than they needed to be. Should have gone with like little RF, like 2.4 gigahertz modules instead, where I could actually just broadcast everything, and it would be way simpler and more efficient. No handshakes or anything. And also, if someone runs up to you with a balloon next to all the people soldering in a hot tent and says, hey, Ben, can you give me an igniter so I can test if the propane is good? Don't. Those are his words. I couldn't post a video in the PDF, so you get a couple of stop motion animation of what happened. So there's his balloon that he decided to test with, and he holds it up, and then tries to run away from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome. Come on up. I'll set up your slides. There you go. Take it away. Introduce yourself and let them know, and then take it away.
Got it? Hi, I'm Katie. This is my first year at Supercon. I also go by Smalls. Woo! Thank you for the shout. I make what is called Sprite lights, as you can see on my body. They are wearable LED body art that has little tiny circuit boards underneath with LEDs and a battery solution that's still in progress. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey getting here. So I started back in 2017, and as you can see right here, I thought latex and hand soldering 1 million LEDs was going to be the way to go. It is absolutely not. Do not do that. However, it was fun, and it was winter, and I was cold, so I stayed inside like a hermit. That's what they look like up close. It was a good idea, bad implementation. So I needed a better substrate to go on your body, right? So silicone is great. So I made an adhesive silicone skin, and on the back of it has a pressure-sensitive adhesive. So it's this room, I would say most of you don't know what an adhesive bra feels like, but if you did, that is the same adhesive that is on these. It's reusable over and over again, body safe, and can be washed if it gets dirty, skin oils, you name it. So that's great. That's what actually has these on my body. Then we had to talk about flexible circuits. So I didn't have a lot of funds to do this. It's probably a relatable problem for most people trying to prototype things. So what I did is I got transparency sheets, and then I got copper traces, and I cut them out myself using a silhouette cutter. You probably could use a Cricut and that kind of thing as well. I used a silhouette. And I can tell you right now, buy extra blades if you're gonna do that, because the copper tape is gonna wear it down super fast, and you're gonna have to go a little bit thicker than you want on your traces. It can't get super fine. But it does a pretty good job, and then you can even, I wouldn't recommend hand soldering it. Instead, what you do is you get a griddle, put some solder paste down, you put your circuits on it, and then you watch it like a hawk. So the moment that your solder turns, shiny, take that thing off. But that's not great, and making the artwork was really labor intensive. So what I was doing was I was printing 3D templates and then painting silicone colors inside of it. Not ideal, takes a really long time. So I actually started experimenting with screen printing, and this is new. That's not what I'm wearing today. Today these are stickers, which is fun. But ideally, we're gonna have the artwork incorporated into the silicone itself because it's more durable, it's flexible, doesn't look shiny when you look at it up close, that kind of thing. And then you can also see here that I was experimenting with screen printed circuits as well. Super fun, highly cost prohibited. And then right here, this is when I went, this is the first time, one of the first times that Sprite Lights ever actually made it out into public. So this was at Comic-Con, and before that was at a maker event, which was great. And so I had a bunch of these out, and as you can see, the battery solution is hard. So I said, screw it, let's make it part of the artwork. People will think it looks like cool tech, They don't want to see the battery, true story. And so now, if you look at the ones that I'm wearing, you can't see the battery. So I've incorporated them underneath the artwork. They are still bulky AF. And so what we're looking at right now is 3D printed batteries. So this is new tech that I'm talking to a manufacturer about, and what they can do is actually print the batteries onto the back of the circuit board. They're paper thin and they're flexible. So that is coming hopefully sometime next year when, I'm gonna plug it, the Kickstarter launches for these. So these are going to go to market hopefully soon. I've recently won a contest that hooks me up with manufacturers and supply chains in China. That was the entire purpose of the contest. And hopefully these are gonna get produced real soon. But a little bit about the journey. There's just one more thing I wanna show you, which was when I thought I would learn how to smelt metal. So this is gallium, or gallistan, sorry, I take it back. And that is a metal that is non-toxic and melts at an incredibly low temperature. So I did this in my driveway, which was probably not the safest thing to do, but it was all brick, so I thought it would probably be okay. And combining everything together, it created this metal that when it is room temperature or even cooler than that, it stays liquid. Which allows you, I don't know if I can play this, it probably won't play. It won't. But you can kind of see here, this circuit has little traces throughout it, and if you were to stretch it, fold it, pull it, do what you want with it, those circuits are self-healing because it's metal traces inside that are liquid, which is super neat. I can't produce these at scale, but if you ever want to try playing with self-healing circuits, it's possible to do it at home, just have a brick driveway. And with that, that's Sprite Lights.
Thank you very much. That's awesome. Damn, I love lightning talks. Let's see, next up. But you have to bear with me because I can't figure this operating system out. You are set. Introduce yourself and get going.
Hey, I'm Greg Steyert, and well, some of you may have seen, but I've got a little electronic business card badge that I work on. It's just NFC based, and I'll just talk real quick about how I got there. All of this stuff is on Hackaday, so if you want to try any of it, it's out there. The first thing I did was NFC uses energy harvesting to power the chip and read it. So I thought that was cool, and I wanted to play with it. So I built a tiny little 1" by 1". Actually, I think it was a Hackaday 1" challenge to do a 1-inch circuit board. So I actually got an NFC reader there, and it actually is energy harvesting, and there's an LED on the back that lights up, and it's got a quick connector so you can connect it to your microcontroller. So then from that, I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. You can pass usable information like a V-card or something. So I did the B3, the blinking business card badge. That was the first iteration on a rigid circuit board. And later, Drew Fustini found me and let me know that Oshpark offers Flex now. So he gave me some credit so I could try my badge on a Flex circuit. So I did that, and that went well. But I wasn't just happy with just blinking. I'm like, I can do more with this. So I added beeping. So at this point, I had to go from just an NFC EEPROM that did the power output. The power output was enough to light something up, but I needed to toggle something to get it to beep. So that required a little micro to toggle the bits. So let me see if I can get this to play here. There he goes. So that is the circuit, and if I go to the next one, so this is the Flex iteration, and the circuit on back is really simple. NXP makes an NFC microcontroller that has a tag built into it, so it's one chip, and then I was able to program the micro to do the beeping, and there is an LED here, but one of the things I learned about this micro is that internally it regulates the NFC voltage down to 1.8 volts, so that was only enough to light the red LED, so this one can only be red even though there's an RGB LED on that. But I do have, I'm working on another iteration. The NXP micro is not the easiest thing to program and to make it a little more accessible. I think I'm gonna go back to an EEPROM with the power output, and I'm working with one of those 10-cent WCH micros. So I'm gonna try to do that so you can program the WCH micro to do some stuff, or I can put a golden image in the WCH micro, and you can, because actually the NFC tags, you can program them from your phone. So you don't need a programmer or anything, and if I preload the micro with some interesting code that reads the EEPROM, then people can customize it without programming it. Another thing is there's a couple vendors that make these chips. So this one, you see it's called Battleboard, because I put, of course, they changed the pinout on their SO8, so they're not compatible. So I put both SO8s on the board, connected to the same antenna so I could measure both. The other thing is the vendors, they don't do a really great job of talking about how much current you can get out of the chips. So the main purpose of this board was to put both chips down and see which one could give me more current to power the microcontroller. And actually the results for that are also on Hackaday. If you look up the B4, the B4 badge, that's all there. The NXP one regulated better and had a little bit higher current. One thing of caution, so with these antennas, the best thing to do is just reuse an antenna that the vendor provides. Just make sure that the antenna is designed for the same load capacitance as a chip you're using. And NXP has a new NTAG 5 out there, but they changed the load capacitance, so I couldn't use it with the same antenna. So I'm using their older NTAG Plus, NTAG I2C Plus or something. But yeah, so I've got that. And one other thing to know when you're working with NFC, Apple, the latest iPhones support NFC, but they have limited out-of-the-box support. They only recognize URLs. So on Android, I was giving people a V card, and it would just encode it in the NFC, and they could save it to their contacts. But nobody on iPhone could do that. So I switched to using a URL. And hey, one of the great things about like these events is Joey solved my problem because he told me it's like so obvious. You just send him a URL so they download the V card. And that works on iPhone and Android, so I got to update my card with that. Thank you, Joey. But yeah, great event. So it's all on Hackaday, and if you got any questions, find me. Thanks.
Thanks very much. That's a great project. All right. Can you set up the next one? DC something something? Yeah, come on up. Might be here. Yeah, DC 612. I need the drive though. If you can copy it to desktop. Nice. Thank you. Here you go. Thank you.
Wonderful.
And they were saying, stay out of the light. So stay
Oh, stay out of the light. Got it.
You can go a little bit further.
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. My name's Amelia Weeding, otherwise known as Ask, and I'm here to talk about Boozy Hacks, automating bartending robots. So I'm going to talk about why I made this project. This is actually a presentation for DC 612. I figured I'd just reuse the slides. So it was for a group called DC Shenanigans at DEF CON. So we throw a party on Wednesday night before DEF CON over at Caesar's Palace. I don't know if we're going to be there again this year, but I was commissioned to create a couple of bartending solutions for us. And so I am Ask. I'm a maker, breaker. I hack things. I run away and chase cool ideas. And so what did we make? It's a robot. It makes cocktails, poorly. The original actually had an annoying buzzer and a light on it, and it was originally in a milk crate, legally purchased. So behold, Senor Drinkenstein, the first model. So you've seen my, what look like 3D printer models out there. If you haven't already, come check them out. But this was the first generation of Senor Drinkenstein, otherwise known as Dr. McGillicuddy's Magic Drink Elixir Mixer Fixer, because I like puns. So let's get down to the brass rail. What is it? It's a bartending robot. We wanted to have an inventory of various different types of drinks that we could pour accurate shots of. Liquid Disgust, if you like Malort for some reason. We want to be able to provide the user with feedback while their drink's being poured and make a semi-decent drink, and actually we're to the point where it makes a pretty mean sidecar, honestly. So what makes it tick? We're running the entire thing on a Raspberry Pi Pico. It's an RP2040, and the current model out there actually has a Pi Pico W in it because we're in the process of adding ChatGPT to it. We're running it all on relays in the original one because I wanted to hear the clicky sounds, and I was really esoteric for some reason and got 3.3 volt relays instead of 5. And we had 9 peristaltic pumps on there, which we will talk about in a moment, and lots of expensive silicone tubing. So yes, we used the Pico, and you can see here I created this circuit board, kind of. I don't really do a good job when I'm doing the layout on the computer, but for some reason with the components in my head, I can just design these boards, mount them to it, and it just works. And then these are the peristaltic pumps that we chose to use. So we had 9 of them. If you don't know what peristaltics is, there's different kinds of pumping systems out there that our team researched to figure out what would be the best way to move the liquids around. Because we want this to be sanitary, we want something we can clean. So we went through different types of pumps, and the peristaltic pump actually turned out to be the perfect solution. So as you can see there, the gears actually rotate and push the liquid through the tube without ever actually touching the liquid. So some of the pros, it's self-priming. It's really easy to load it up with liquid and get it pumped through. You can change out the tubing. You can get really long tube runs on there, like really, really long. The biggest cons that we found, it takes a long time for it to pour, and you can't do carbonated beverages with it because it actually creates a vacuum when it's rotating. We learned that one the hard way. And it does like to explode. They can make a lot of pressure on that other side. So we've had lines get plugged up and they really do explode. So you can get the pumps online. They're various prices. We found the cheap ones really don't work that well. So we go for like the $12 to $25 ones. So kind of how it's made. Step 1, get a milk crate. And you want to print a lot of things. I designed everything in OpenSCAD. It's all open source online. If you just go to the DC Shenanigans GitHub, all the stuff for this version is up there. Printed a circuit board. Like, do you think you could do that? That was pretty fun to do. Really fun to wire up too. We switched over to screw downs. So on the previous model, we actually, you can see here, these are meltdown pegs. That was a bad idea. You can't remove things if you melt down the pegs. So we switched over to screwing things down, designing all the housings, printing everything. Everything was printed on an Ender 3 or a BQ-B1. And then everything had to be wired up inside of the milk crate. When I said it was in a milk crate, I wasn't kidding. It actually says, for use only by legal owner. And then we had to design a nozzle system to deliver all of the liquids and everything. I had to figure out a button system for the pumps. And so yeah, we used OpenSCAD, Cura, Inkscape, BQ, CircuitPython. TS100 did like literally all of that soldering. And then my Cricut Explorer Air 2 did all of that tiny filleting. That's actually 1-point font. So that took a lot of tuning to get that to do. And it says RIP because at DEF CON my car got busted into. So they left all the booze and the bar robots for some reason. No idea why. But yeah, the programming's all the models, OpenSCAD. CircuitPython actually is only 431 lines of code that runs this. It's all driven by a JSON config file where you can just set up what drinks are on what pump and then what every drink needs to be poured as. And yeah, conclusion, bar robots, they're really fun. They're really good. They save a lot of time. Paying for DEF CON bartenders, it's not really fun to do. Bartenders are great though. You definitely tip your bartenders. But it was gonna cost us like $2,000 to get a couple of bartenders for an 8-hour party, and I can make these bar robots for far cheaper, so. And you definitely should come see us at the DC Shenanigans party next year. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much. Thanks, that's great. All right, next up. Yeah, you can do that. You're better at it than I am. Deborah Ansel, Blinky, something, something. So bright.
So bright. Okay, got it.
Oh. Deborah Ansel, Blinky, something, something. And we had a request that you kind of stay behind the podium for lighting reasons, if that's cool. And here you go.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Your hand
Can
holder, yeah,
yeah, because I work with props.
Yeah.
So
Right.
need my hands. So, good morning. So this is the view from the main stage. Hi. My name is Deborah Ansell, and I was told this morning I apologize too much, but I am going to start with 2 apologies. First of all, when this event was announced, I heard lighting talks. So I work to theme. Second of all, apologies to Hackaday because most of my documentation is actually social media. So if you, these projects here mostly, with the exception of one, exist nowhere but kind of my Instagram and Mastodon accounts right now. So, but I'm gonna show, it's more of a show and tell of a set of projects I made that are riffs on a particular theme. And it's a theme that was initiated by one of the makers here, I don't know if he's in the room, David Shorey and actually Sophie Wong have both done really interesting projects based on 3D printing on fabric. Now, if you've seen my other projects, I'm very into making things light up. I'm very into wearables. I'm very into taking electronics and putting them, I like them to be soft and squishy and cuddly. So when I see like something on fabric, I'm like, the first thing I see is how can I put LEDs in this? And the advent of these relatively new pebble lights, and by the way, I have a ton of these. This was about, when I bought these, they were only available in batches of 1,000. I've used them to make my lanyard, and if you'd like to make one, I've got tons, and I've got the string, and you are welcome to come find me, and I will very happily cut you a length to make your own lanyard, please do. But these pebble lights are like what I was waiting for my whole life, which is why I bought 1,000, because they're super sturdy, they're resin encased, they are very flexible because the wire is silicone coated, stranded wire is silicone coated, and they work great for squishy, stretchy projects that need to be sturdy, which obviously if you're not going to have a hard enclosure for your electronics, you need sturdy interior. So, now I gotta bend down. So these are, I call them, they're squishy icosahedron and squishy dodecahedron, and they're made by, first of all, the forms are really super easy to sew if you sew at all. These are nice because any regular polyhedra has identical sides, so I laser, the trick to putting LEDs behind fabric with a 3D printed diffuser, which is what these are I start with the fabric pattern. Generally, you want to have a lot of regularly spaced holes, so I like fabric you can laser cut. This, thank you. This happens to be, no, sorry. I keep moving around. This is fleece. Fleece laser cuts really well, and you can get, other projects I've made use laser cuttable pleather, but make sure you don't do vinyl on your laser cutter. You can also use a vinyl cutter if you want to try stuff like that. So laser cut the sides, sew them together, just pick any non-fraying fabric. And then you can see David Shorey and again Sophie Wong have published lots of interesting stuff on how you can laser cut, how you can 3D print like tiles onto a mesh fabric, which then become very flexible. So what I did is I sewed together the sides of these sides of these squishy polyhedra. And I'm happy to pass these around. You guys want to, they're really, like the best thing about like squishy electronics is like they're really sturdy. Do that with your badges, people, I dare you. So it's all the things I'm showing you are made basically the same way. You laser cut a shell, like laser cut and sew together a shell in whatever shape. 3D print a mesh of tiles that where the tiles poke through the holes. You can see that I've done that. And you can attach them with glue. I think the next. So and then you take your LED string. That was kind of my favorite LED string prior to these pebble lights coming out, this little wired string. And it's very flexible, so you don't even have, you can bend the wire. So you just hot glue the LEDs behind the translucent tiles. And the great thing about the hot glue is it's an adhesive and also a light pipe, so it gives for a nice effect. And so also, so obviously you don't just have to do regular polyhedra. I took some sewing patterns for a fish and basically made the pattern, except I adapted the side panel to have holes, and these are now rainbow fish, 3D printed scales. You can approach me and look at these later. With the wires, I won't pass these around. Ooh, time goes fast. Okay, so let's see. So yeah, one of the icosahedra is pixel mapped. So I did that in P5.js. I created a little code to map the pixels, and it's run off of a really, really cool microcontroller that, if you were here last year, Ben Henke, I think, won the badge hacking. He has an amazing LED microcontroller called Pixel Blaze that I highly, highly recommend. The dodecahedron with the circles is actually just running off a cheap controller, but it just so happens the pattern length fits perfectly to the pattern of LEDs on the side, and it looks really nice. But that's the mapping of the icosahedra in Pixel Blaze. And so the one project of these that actually is documented in this month's Make magazine, a version of this LED handbag is on the cover, not quite this one, but it works really well. You don't have to, you can just use any soft project with a flat panel, can adapt really easily to this kind of technique of lighted tiles for decoration. When I use faux leather, I use my vinyl cutter to make the shapes. And again, you can actually see all the details of how to make a handbag similar to this in this month's Make. And actually, the funny thing is, this was the first design. It turns out that we couldn't actually publish this exact one because Issey Miyake has apparently a trademark on triangles on handbags, just as a side note. So the Make version is slightly different shapes, even though this is easier. So you kind of never know what obstacles you're going to run into when you want to publish your builds. And I am at 7 minutes, and that's all I got to say. Thank you. And come play with this stuff. It's all fun and touchable. Okay.
Thank you very, very much. Yeah, take it easy. Everything's good. Oh, thanks for all the props. That's fantastic. All right. This guy has a website, so fire up a browser. Okay, sure.
Put it in the website for me.
Just got to cold boot my website, I guess. Hold on. Yeah, I'm using Google Slides, and I'm a very visual-driven person, so it has a lot of animations and videos. So I just made a quick blog post here called Supercon, and then it goes to my actual presentation here. So presenter mode? Can I do presenter mode on here? No, ah, man, I need these notes. All right.
Let's see here. Sorry.
Oh, it's so hard.
Yeah, it's
It's fun. Okay. Doing this on the fly. Okay. It's not your way. Okay, it's working. All right, you're all set.
All right, reset my timer here. So, all right, so this is just basically a story of like, I finally got to the end of college and I had some money and I could start making hardware projects, and I wanted to make a really cool graduation cap from all the skills I got in college. I'm Josh. I got a degree in computer engineering from Purdue University. I wanted to take the knowledge of programming I learned in high school and apply it to hardware now that I had money, because hardware is not as accessible. I'm also really inspired by the videos I watch on YouTube a lot. Yeah, so I also want to give a little bit of warning. I wrote this talk a few years ago when I was graduating college and I was looking for a job. I was a little bit more angsty then, and this is one of my first hardware projects. There is no plan to this project at all. I'm making it up as I go. I often fall down rabbit holes and don't finish things. So some things didn't get done before I actually had to graduate. Also, another warning, don't hire me to handle fragile things, as you'll learn in this talk is very important. Okay, my goals for this talk is I want to make a very cool graduation cap, maybe make it on the news or something like that, and profit from all the transactions that people are sending me from Venmo to display on my graduation cap. So let's get started. The first step is we got to tear into the graduation cap. And then we need to order some parts here. We need to get a boost converter to boost up the voltage from the battery to 5 volts to power the Raspberry Pi. We need some type of battery. I chose a 3.5 6,600 milliamp battery, a Raspberry Pi Zero. Make sure it has the headers, and also an LED matrix, a 32 by 32 matrix. The pitch is very important because it's the spread between the LEDs. And how are we going to get this to talk from the LED matrix to the Raspberry Pi is a Adafruit RGB matrix bonnet, and then an SD card to store all of this. So first off, I don't know what I'm doing at all, honestly. I'm just trying to get something on the LED matrix. I get a line, and then I get half the screen going, and then I get it fully rotating. But I have some bad news for you. I dropped the screen. So this totally totals that screen, and now I'm out $55 as a very broke college student. So in the meantime, I'll just order that parts, put it on my credit cards, and not worry about it. So I'm going to get the data going by using Puppeteer and Firebase. So Puppeteer is basically a wrapper around the Chrome browser that gives you an easy interface in JavaScript to do all kinds of things here. So I was just using it to grab all my Venmo transactions and log in through my Venmo account, and then shovel all that data to Firebase. So as you can see here, in the farthest left image, oh shit, it's backwards. Farthest, yeah, still left. It's just me trying to show an image from Venmo, which is just a profile photo. And then the second image is like a profile photo and their username cycling through users. And the third is like, so profile name, their image, and the start of a message. So I wanted to look a little pretty and add a border around the images. So this is the code to make a mask. So it looks really good. Also, a common thing with Venmo messages is people just put straight emojis in them. So that makes things kind of hard. So Python to the rescue, just import emoji, and now it's encoded to text. But I have bad news for you guys again. I have dropped the screen. But it's okay. I've only broken one segment. It's fine. I can muster through this. But I also have some news for you. Today is Friday, and tomorrow I graduate. So I haven't finished most of it, but at least it can show pretty things on my screen. And then I get to use it at graduation, making my Asian mother very proud. fitting the stereotype, and my mom has bragging rights that her son's an engineer. And, and this is the photo that hangs in my mom's wall. I thank her for last minute sending this to me like 2 minutes ago. And so here's where the problems go in. So because I was, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm testing the Venmo, scraping Venmo like every few minutes. So by the time of graduation, Venmo is like, you've been hitting our site too much. We're not letting you view us at all, you know. Yeah, very sad. Also, I didn't think about where I was going to host the data collection service, or how I was going to connect this to the internet. So those are big hindsights in that moment. And also, one thing about Firebase is running it on the Raspberry Pi is if it doesn't have internet, it blocks and it will crash my program. But there's a fix for that. You can just have a function that repetitively checks to see if there is a internet connection like this one, and you can then connect to your database or disconnect to your database if there's no transactions. And I have very bad news for you once again. I have dropped the screen. But it's, so it's not working. And also this video is not working either, but it's actually not the problem I thought it was, because it's just like under voltage. So whatever I was doing, I just need to apply more volts and it won't be just all red LEDs on this matrix. So yeah, that's my talk. Thank you very much. Also, don't hire me to carry things. And if you would like a sticker of my face, please email me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Fantastic. Let's see. Do you undo it, or it was a Chrome? Yeah. Do you need speaker notes on? Oh yeah, you're in the other window.
Yeah, I'm just gonna remirror it real quick.
Not a Mac person. Ubuntu only. I just need a Chrome browser.
Okay. I'm just fixing our display real quick. It's not showing up behind you. That should fix it.
Well, I don't want to copy it because I'm going to enter in a password.
Okay, gotcha. Let me just get the window.
We did have this all prepared, and then it got exited in the process. So, patience. While that gets started, hi, I'm Kate. I'm going to be talking about the user experience of LCD displays today for the Field Kit. So, I believe it was 2019, Field Kit 1. Oh, we need a microphone. Can you hear me now? Woo! Hi, I'm Kate. We're going to be talking about, so I did have this all prepared, and then it got exited because chaos. But today we're going to be talking about the user experience of LCD displays. So has anyone have any experience with that? Okay, sweet. So give me some patience. Say hi to your neighbor. Do you know the person next to you? If not, talk to the other person next to you. Make friends. So now that we've all been social, hi. Does anyone know what Field Kit is? Okay. a few people. So Field Kit is environmental sensors. So we make environmental sensors for all sorts of uses, but this one particularly has water oxygen and water conductivity, and there was water temperature plugged in, but I was hacking around and playing with it. You can get a pH sensor in there, you can get a weather sensor in there, all sorts of wonderful things. Ooh, you can't see that, can you? I'm gonna have to zoom in a bit. But there is this beautiful little LCD display there. I don't know if you can see that. No. Just imagine it. We're gonna work on this. So we wanna create a great user experience because a lot of the people that use our product are scientists. Can you see that? Sweet. Okay, so you see there we have Jumpy Sloth 86. That's the name of our device. And then we have something called Phylum FS, which, a scientist would not know where it is. So we really want to make the whole process as we go through this really easy to use. So one of the first things we did was map out the process as it is. And this is a process that's still happening. But if anyone's familiar with Figma, you can literally go in and map out different temperatures. And so I want to go through, as we mapped out our menu, some of the different problems we ran into, and yeah, so things you can do yourself. So far haven't seen anyone do this process in this way. So if you have, please talk to me, and I want to talk more about your experiences. But like one of the things we ran into very quickly was temperature, temp, and temperature. What are they measuring? So we have a water temperature sensor and temperature on the board, but to the scientist, they know the difference? And so is there a learnability factor in human-computer interaction, HCI, where I have a background? There needs to be a learnability factor. And we found that in other things like poll every two, like this. What does poll mean? What does sleeping mean? What does that go into? And our app didn't really explain a lot of these concepts. And we also found that there was just pages that were not necessary. So when we go through modules, and we go to click on modules, it goes to stations, but this whole page only has a back and a stations button. Is that page really necessary? So by mapping this out, you can see some redundancies and do there. We also noticed the back button is usually at the top here. It is actually occasionally at the bottom. Is there consistency in your menu design? So this is what would be considered slightly higher fidelity of a design. Anyone higher fidelity, low fidelity, knowledge on that? I'm seeing some nods. So high fidelity is when it looks more like the final product. So this looks like there. We don't need it looking super pretty. I know there's some LCD screens that look way prettier out there, but we do want it looking like the final one. Low fidelity is when it is more of a sketch, if that makes sense. If everyone's seen the wireframe sketch on there, there is a reason to do arrows and make it look kind of ugly, because people feel like they can edit and they can go in and do stuff. So let me go into some of my notes. So the cool thing you can do in Figma is you can literally just go in and be like, what's this? Exit this, dissolve this, write comments, do this, and really have a collaborative process, and make sure that different members of your team can collaborate and create the best menus possible. And that's all I had to say. Thank you for listening.
Thanks very much. That was a great talk. No slides, Scotty Allen.
Okay.
And I'm taking this pen drive. Next up, Scotty Allen.
Thank you. Hi, guys. So, I don't have any slides. This is a little bit off the cuff here. And I'm not going to talk electronics or computers today. I'm going to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and probably to everybody else out there, but you may not know it yet. So a few years ago, I was in a warehouse in Texas building a BattleBot, and I had a pipe tip over and hit me in the back of the head. And it was something that could have happened to any of you in literally anywhere. It could have happened in your garage. And I ended up with a concussion. And it took me over 18 months to recover. And I wasn't sure if I ever would recover. And the state that I was in while I was recovering, to be honest, and this is intense, I wasn't sure it was a life worth living. And I'm very lucky to be standing here today. I would say 95% recovered. It's something that's still there and I notice, but it doesn't really slow me down day to day. And so what I wanted to share today, I think like many of you, maybe most or all of you, my brain and my ability to think is a core part of my identity. And so I wanted to share what I've learned about concussion recovery in my journey, because if you just go to any random doctor, pretty much anywhere in the world at this point, you will get 20 to 30 years out of date advice that will lead to a much slower, if not a much slower recovery or no recovery at all. And so I wanted to share what I know, either if you have experienced a head injury or you know someone who's experienced a head injury or you experience one in the future, so that you know what to do and what not to do. So I'm going to try and keep this quick. So just really quickly, let's define what we're talking about with a concussion versus what they would call a major traumatic brain injury. So a major traumatic brain injury would be you're actually damaging significant parts of the brain tissue, and it's gone and it's dead and it's not there anymore. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a minor traumatic brain injury where all of the tissue is there, but it's not functioning correctly anymore, or it's not connected, the parts aren't connected the way they should be anymore. Symptoms, so in terms of symptoms, you can still walk, you can still talk, you can still eat, you can feed yourself, all of that stuff. You just can't do it very well or for very long. So symptoms, the biggest one is headaches. People get migraine-like headaches. There's actually a bunch of different types of headaches. So migraine-like stuff, band headaches where you've got kind of tension all the way around your head, stuff that's localized to your eyes. And one of the things that's very core to concussions is that different people experience different symptoms, and there are a whole bunch of different causes that need to be treated in different ways. So other symptoms include vestibular balance issues. A lot of concussion patients wouldn't pass field side sobriety tests for DUI. So if you think about all of the things that are involved in that, vision tests, vestibular, cognition tests like reciting the alphabet backwards, things like that. So vision issues, your eyes get wonky. You can still see, but your eyes aren't moving correctly, and so it's hard to track things. Slurred speech, when my symptoms got really bad, I slurred my speech. Brain fog, memory issues, sensitivity to light, sound and movement, which then usually induces headaches and brain fog. And just overall lowered cognition. And it kind of comes and goes as well. And one thing that I learned is that recovery from a concussion is harder for neurodivergent people. So that may be particularly relevant to this audience. So it's really important to know what to do and what not to do. The other thing that's endemic to concussions is that it's not, that standard imaging doesn't show it. So you do, an X-ray won't show anything, an MRI usually won't show anything. There isn't, the damage to the brain isn't large enough to be seen by standard imaging. And really all they're looking for when you go, if you go to the ER, which you should go, is just, do you have a skull fracture? Do you have a brain bleed? Do you have something really serious that needs to be dealt with now? And so what that leads to is it leads to really poor concussion care, because they're like, well, we don't see anything, go home and rest. The traditional advice is what's called cocoon therapy. Go sit in a dark room until you feel better and sleep, right? Don't do anything, don't watch TV, don't read, don't do anything stimulating. And what that causes, it just causes the brain to stagnate, and it actually significantly prolongs recovery, and often, for patients like me, leads to a state where you stagnate and you don't recover at all. So, what should you do? First, 24 to 48 hours after a concussion, go to the ER, get your CT scan, get your X-ray, get your MRI. Make sure you don't have anything that needs to be dealt with right away. If you don't, then rest for 24 to 48 hours, but no more, right? If you rest more than that, you will cause yourself harm. Then gradually resume your day-to-day activities. So that includes going for a walk around the block, starting to go back to work or school, but only to the point that you're not exacerbating your symptoms a lot. And this is the really hard part. It's like, it's okay to exacerbate your symptoms a little bit, but if you go a lot, then you're inhibiting recovery. And I found that very, very hard. I next want to talk about the thing that saved me. So I tried to do all the research that I could. I was told at one point by a concussion specialist, use your brain to heal your brain, which is a very frustrating statement, particularly when you're not thinking super clearly. In the end, I went to a private concussion clinic in Provo, Utah called Cognitive Effects that's been doing a bunch of their own R&D. Their protocol involves a functional MRI, so it's a week-long treatment program. They do a functional MRI at the beginning that they have done a bunch of work on top of using ML and a bunch of scans of normative people who haven't had concussions to figure out where blood flow in the brain is different in someone who has a concussion versus someone who doesn't. And then they target that using cognitive therapy, think like physical therapy type stuff. So non-invasive type activities. And so their treatment, so I went for 5 days, and 6 months later I was back to normal. And it was all due to those 5 days, but it just takes time for the brain to regrow. So a couple things to talk about. Their entire treatment is based on neuroplasticity and neurovascular coupling. So a couple ideas we need to talk about. Neurovascular coupling is super interesting. It's the idea that our neurons and the blood vessels that are next to them are linked together. So if you stimulate the neurons, that encourages regrowth of blood vessels. And if you get blood vessels to regrow and you get more blood flow, then the neurons can heal themselves. So the other issue is that when someone has an MTBI, a concussion, generally the symptoms are caused by parts of the brain no longer being super active, right? There were blood vessels severed, the neurons either lose connections, die, or just become inactive. And because the brain is neuroplastic, it starts using other parts of the brain that are working to do whatever that part of the brain that's not working was doing, right? But it's not super efficient. So their treatment that they've developed and is widely supported by the literature but not understood by clinicians is the idea that you want to restore the blood flow to parts of the brain that are not functioning properly using neurovascular coupling by stimulating those neurons using non-invasive exercises, basically. So their treatment is very expensive and not covered by insurance. And so part of what I want to do is get out there the ideas so that you can try and do it at home. If you can't, then you should go see them. But it's quite expensive. So the idea is it's 3 stages. So you start by increasing blood flow using interval exercise. So 45 seconds of high intensity exercise on things like a stationary bike, and then use breathing, 6 seconds in, 4 seconds out, 1 second pause to bring your heart rate back down. Once you can get to the point where you can completely control your breathing, then you do 45 seconds again. Do that for 30 minutes. That's to do 2 things. Increase blood flow so that you have increased blood flow when you do the next step to increase neurovascular regrowth, but also to retrain your central nervous system because your central nervous system will increase the blood pressure in your brain, which causes headaches. Then you get into cognitive exercises, so cognitive, physical, visual, vestibular exercises, right? And the idea here is to occupy the parts of the brain that are routing around the damaged part of the brain, or the part that's not functioning, occupy them, and then target the part that's not working with another exercise. So we're doing things like, this is, essentially the equivalent of like, rubbing your belly and patting your head, right? So something that involves balance, standing on one foot, something that involves maybe your verbal ability, so having a conversation with someone, and something like a card sorting task, right? So you're doing 2, 3, 4 things at once. And I don't have time to go into all of them, but there are a bunch of different things you can do there. And the idea there is to force the part of the brain that's not functioning very well to activate those neurons, to start working again. That will encourage regrowth of blood flow, and then that will allow those neurons to start functioning again over time, and it takes time. And then lastly, rest to lower symptoms. They're a big believer in binaural beats. If you haven't heard of that, you should definitely look it up. It's super interesting. You play 2 different sounds in 2 different frequencies, one into each ear using headphones. They cause interference in your brain, which causes a lower frequency beat, and you can actually change your brainwave frequency using that. And then lastly, I need to wrap up here, but I will say, if you are really suffering from a concussion the way I was, this is hard to do on your own. And I think not only have they, the benefit of going to them is not only have they pioneered all this research and understand it really well and have an MRI machine so they can target the techniques and exercises a lot better, but it is all optimized to be doing this 9 hours a day nonstop. So if you can afford to go, my understanding is it's about $13,000 for the week, and it's not covered by insurance, but my calculus was that what else, I had that in savings, what else was I gonna spend it on? If I didn't go there, I was just gonna spend it on rent until I was homeless. So if you have it, spend it. They also have a sister clinic that does take insurance if you're within a month of your injury. The other thing I'll throw out there is they use a ton of different technology for their treatment, which involves things like buttons that light up on the wall. One of their things it has a number of buttons that light up on the wall. It's $10,000 retail. There are huge opportunities for this group. We could build things that are much cheaper and much more effective and better than what they have, but because it's a niche market, they're getting taken advantage of, and it's inhibiting care. So if you want to talk to me about that afterwards, you're welcome to. If you want to talk to me about concussion care more, please come either find me afterwards, or you can email me at contact@strangeparts.com. I'm happy to talk about this. I'm super passionate. If you've suffered an injury or you know someone who has, I'll try and get you all the information and resources I can. Thank you. Thanks.
That was awesome. Thank you. All right. Set up the slides. I don't either. This is good? Yeah, it looks great. Good. Come on up. Next up, Tina Belmont.
Hello, children. I'm Tina Belmont. I'll be your substitute teacher today, and Mr. Marmock's going to be here. All right, so really quick, we're going to cover, you may have had this lesson before. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but let's go into how to build a digital music synthesizer in 2 minutes. Okay, so music is sound that communicates emotion, duh. Sounds are vibrations in the air, and air can be vibrated by a speaker, of course. Right? So a speaker can be attached to a pin of a microcontroller. You might want to use an amplifier or something in between. You get better results. And you might use a D to A pin if you have one. Sound is made up of different parameters, right? You have the frequency, right? It's any waveform, right? So you have the frequency, which is a pitch, right? And then you have the amplitude, which is volume. But then you also have the harmonic content, and that can take the form of different waveforms. That could be a sample that you play back, or it could be built up, from analog operations, right? So you can store your waveform in a table of numbers. There's, make sure you write this down. And you could store the whole recording of an instrument. That's digital sampling, but that's not what we're doing. Right? We're going to build a synthesizer, which makes sounds with calculations. Right? So microcontrollers don't have that much memory anyway. At least they didn't used to. When I wrote this, they didn't. Okay, so we want to output sound from the microcontroller, so we just want one period of a simple waveform, right? And we can loop that, right? So this is, we have a sine wave here, and we're going to sample that, right? So the D to A output of your microcontroller is always going to be the same speed, so you're going to have to go and sample that waveform that you've already sampled at different frequencies. So there's a whole bunch of math here about how to do that, which I'm not going to explain to you. You can figure it out. But basically, you're taking your one waveform. OK, I've got this many samples. And you're going to divide that out and then multiply it back by your frequency. So, and if you have 256 samples, that's going to be a slightly flat F3. Right, so here's all your math. And so if you're doing different pitches from one waveform, you might have trouble with aliasing. So you kind of want to use a pretty high sample rate for your initial waveform. The Nyquist frequency is a thing. So make your sample table large enough to avoid having problems with lowest notes, right? Because the lowest notes are the ones where you're going to be stretching that out, repeating samples, right? So C0 is 16.35 hertz, right? So you can do the math equation. So you want at least a little over 2K of samples. You probably round that up to 4,096 for good measure. Or live with the grit. Hey, you might like it. That's what I do. So what are the note frequencies? Now, an octave is 12 notes, which are called half steps because music is stupid. I know we're in a music college. You can relate that it's stupid. All right, so each octave doubles in pitch, right? So it's going to just take the pitch, multiply it by 2. But how do you get the frequency of individual notes? Well, that actually increases as 2 to the power of 1 to the 12th, 1/12th, right? So that's a little weird to do. But you can use that relation, and you can sort of multiply that as you go, right? So but you're just going to stick this in a table and stick it in your code and forget about it, right? You don't need to do this calculation on the fly. You'd be wasting microprocessor time to do it, right? But if you want fine-tuning, if you want to do bends and stuff like that, then you need the equation, but here's a little cheat for you there, right? Say, help, my microcontroller can't floating point. And I know that might not be an issue so much these days, but if you're really cheap like I am and using an STM32F106 T8C3, I got that backwards, then you want to use fixed point math. So bro, do you even fixed point math? Right. So it's just bloody fractions, right? You're going to multiply a value to bring the fractional part into the integer range, right? And then if you use a power of 2, you can use shift for that, which is a lot cheaper on microcontrollers, right? So if you want to have 8 bits of precision, you shift it 8, right? That's hexadecimal, right? So if you want 0.5, then 128 would be 0.5 if you're using 8 bits of, if your floating point, if your fixed point is at 8 bits. So pick a precision that works for the problem you're trying to solve, right? Every problem that you're doing, it's not like you just say, oh, I turn on fixed point math and it does the thing. No, pick a precision that works with what you're doing. If you need it all decimal, if it only goes from 0 to 1, then use all of your bits for your fixed point math. Put your fixed point at the end, right? If you're going to do something where you need a little, like 8 values and then it's all, pick what works for what you're doing right now and do each one individually. Don't go and just use a library or something, right? So, hey, my slides actually did that. Right, and so obviously if you need negative numbers, leave a bit at the top, and don't forget to leave overflow precision, right? Because you're going to multiply things, you're going to need to sort of double your precision, right? So, and don't forget to shift it right when you're done, right? And when you're going to output it, you have to go and get it back to a real number that you can work with. So always keep track of what your precision is, right? So, and this is one where we do, and we say, okay, we're going to have a value from 0 to, 0 to 1, and so we're just going to use all 8 bits for that if we're doing 8-bit math. If you're doing 16-bit math, you could use all 16 bits. All right, so very easy to do this in C. Your uint16t, shift right by 8 bits to cancel it out when you're all done, and the result is your new output sample. All right, this sounds boring. Let's make it interesting. Okay, so what I'm talking about is the actual quality of a sound which is going to come out. Making a sine wave or a square wave is not that interesting. That's like a toy organ. We want to make something cool. So what can we do to it? Well, if we have 2 oscillators, if you detune them slightly, it makes this sort of kind of pulsing, ringing noise. It's sort of a chorus, right? So you can take the two oscillators and you can multiply them together, and then you get that's what's called a ring modulator. And then you get these really interesting harmonics doing that. And there's certain sounds which are done where you have an envelope on one oscillator and then and you're using the ring modulator, and so that will make the other oscillator do some weird stuff. You can restart one based on the other. That's sync. That's another thing you do, where you have one oscillator which is going at a faster frequency, and then that triggers the other one to restart, but it's only partway through, and so you get this weird clipped tone. The song "I'm Just a Girl" used that technique for their synth solo. You can use the frequency of one to modulate the parameters of the other one, right? So you can use a low frequency oscillator. So you can modify the pitch to give it a vibrato, right? You can modify the volume, it gives you a tremolo. You can modify the phase, which is phase distortion, which was used famously in Casio's line of keyboards back in the 80s, the CZ series. You can put a filter on it, and filter is really, really handy. Not only can you do your dubstep webs, but also pretty much any synth sound worth its salt is going to have a envelope on the filter, kind of making it more, it's going to have a high-pass filter, and it's going to be making it more filtered as it goes on. And then you can also multiply the pulse width, which is a cheap way. If you're using just one oscillator and you have a square wave, you can actually use that to go and make it sound like you've got two oscillators. Right, so that's what is actually used on the Roland, Juno 106, and HS60. So you can use envelopes, right? This is a standard envelope, the attack, decay, sustain, release envelope, right? Sustain is when you're holding the key down. And the rest of them, you have this little peak there, right? The little pop in the beginning, which might not be a pop. It might just be a smooth thing if it's strings, right? And then the release, which could be instantly if it's an organ, or it could go very long if you're, have like a bell sound, right? And so you can apply that to anything, though. You could apply that to the volume, which is what I was telling you, but you can also apply it to the pitch or to the filter or any parameter. Just go wild, experiment. This is sound design, which is not really what it is, but the point is to give you the tools when you're making your sound for what you're going to do on your synthesizer, right? So I keep on mentioning filters. What the fuck is a filter? Right? So a filter reduces the harmonic content of a signal. So I have a sawtooth wave here, and then you show, putting a low-pass filter on it, it goes and makes it more like a sine wave. And that's cool when you sweep it with an element, with an envelope or an LFO. That can make a really, really interesting sound. Low pass is the most common, but high pass can also be used, and even band pass filters. Right, so go Google some algorithms. I'm not going to explain them, but it's not really that hard. I had a big mental block about this for a long time, but actually the algorithm is really nothing. So play modes via MIDI. MIDI is really, really simple. I mean, really simple. It's a serial port that runs at 31,250 bits per second with start and stop bits. That's 10 bits. And you have an opto-isolator, so you don't get noise in your circuit. You can do it without the opto-isolator, but then you might get ground loops, and you don't want that if you're doing an audio project. If the high bit is set in MIDI, it's a command. Otherwise, the last command stands, so you can just keep on sending notes over and over. And so, the high nibble is a command, and the low nibble is a channel, so you can actually do multi-channel with just one byte of operations. And then there's actually some commands which are CC commands, which will allow you to have more than 8 bits for your output. So there's a nice library for Arduino from 47effects, which is actually the standard Arduino library, and it's in the library manager. PGRC, which makes the Teensy chips, which are really great for doing audio projects, gives you MIDI over USB for free with the bootloader. I don't know if that's a thing on Arduino yet, but that's really, really handy. That makes things trivial. And then if your keyboard has knobs or sliders, you can go and adjust your parameters with CC messages, as I was saying. And then you don't have to actually have the knobs on your own box. I like to have the knobs on the box. Knobs are cool. So that is the end of the talk. But I thought I'd show you a little bit here about what we actually have, a digital music synthesizer. This is one I built. This is called Stylish, which is because you wear it as a belt buckle. And it's very stylish, and you control it with a stylus. Right? So put this here. And this will actually do multiple sounds, right? I don't know if the microphone picked that up. But now, okay, one last thing, the last part of the example here. Right, so just to show that this is actually digital music synthesizer following our techniques, we'll get our screwdriver here, and we'll take the back off. And you'll see just how simple this is. Right, so open it up, pop the back. All right, there is your STM32 F103C8T6 microcontroller. Right, that is the blue pill board. That is about $2 to $3 on AliExpress. All right, the rest of the thing is a low-pass filter, which is hiding over here, an amplifier, which is hiding here, and basically what's a standard LED ring that I added to the project, right? I just put that on the circuit board, but you could just use an LED ring. So for about less than $10 in parts, you could build this. It's on GitHub. And I have little cards if you want the URLs for it and stuff. I can hand you a little card which has all the information about where to get it. Also, it includes all the files to build the enclosure and stuff like that. I'm going to eventually be selling these. It's been put off since 2020 because COVID happened, and I'm trying to move to Germany. If anybody's hiring in Germany, I need to get a job so I can get health insurance. Anyway, thank you very much. Oh yeah, one last thing. For those of you who knew me at previous SuperCons, thank you so much for not making a big deal about it. And yeah, trans rights. Cheers.
Thanks very much. And if the graphical style of that 3D printed case looks familiar to you, it's because she made the case design that a lot of people have copied and put on their badges this year, like a little bit before. That's really super cool. Thanks very much. No slide. And last up, we got Ali Katz. Oh, do you need slides?
No,
you're good. Here, could you stand into the mic?
I was going to say, actually, can we move the computer so I can send the ball
totally.
down?
Yeah, here. Yup. I believe so.
The best of our ability.
No, it's good.
Play this game. Yeah, we're fine.
We're froze.
Actually, maybe not.
Is that good?
I don't know that I can actually set it down. I think it might roll off, but that's okay.
Should I make this taller, bigger, shorter?
I might just take this off here.
Yeah. Cool.
That's fine. I can stand and talk. Hi. For those of you who don't know me, and some of you do, my name is Ali Katz. I go by Katz Creates Online. I am a non-binary engineer, maker, artist, creator of things. And I was very much roped into this at the last minute, so I have no slides. However, I have a physical thing to show you. So some of you will have already seen me walking around with this and may have asked me questions. And so if you already know the answers to these things, I'm sorry you're going to hear them again. But this here is the Dynamax ball with the Pokeball controller. For those of you who are not versed in Pokemon Nerd, this is obviously, yes, this is a Pokemon-related thing, specifically from a game called Pokemon Sword and Shield, where there are giant Pokemon, basically Godzilla-sized Pokemon, and to catch a big Pokemon, you need a big Pokeball. And for reasons I cannot explain, it lights up and glows. So we don't question these things. We don't question the decisions of the Pokemon Company. They do what they want, and thus us lowly nerds simply recreate their beauty in physical form. So for those of you who don't already know about this particular build, it is almost entirely 3D printed. If you have seen it up close, you will have noticed that it is actually quite smooth and shiny, and one of probably the most often asked questions I have gotten about this is, what the heck did you 3D print that in, Ali? Because I have never seen this kind of material before. And it is actually nothing particularly special, though I think it officially qualifies as an exotic filament, because I think anything that isn't PLA these days is an exotic filament. So it is actually what is known as PVB. And please don't ask me exactly what that stands for. Somebody in the audience probably knows. I don't know it off the top of my head. But it is incredibly similar actually to PVA, which you will know as either soluble supports or Elmer's glue. And so PVB is a wonderful filament to do this sort of thing with, because it prints like PLA. 210, 215 Celsius on your printer, no enclosure, no special settings even. You can literally print this under a PLA setting. And then it is smoothable with isopropyl alcohol. That's it. Now, I will say, and this is one thing I haven't been sharing with people, there are very much a sort of tips and tricks sort of thing with smoothing PVB in that it very much takes time to settle. I have learned the hard way that if you go too hard too fast with it, it basically melts, because that is what it's doing, it's melting. And if you do it too quickly, it will just melt too far and you'll get bubbles and it won't actually be smooth. It'll then just look like garbage. But it also off-gases for about a week. So don't expect to do anything with it for a little while after you've smoothed that. You need to just forget it exists for a little while and then come back to it later and it will then be nice and hard and fine. As you can see, it comes in a range of colors. This is all from Polymaker. They have a line called Poly Smooth, and it has 10 to 15 different colors. So you can actually do a fair amount with it, and then you don't actually have to paint your prints. You can just print them and smooth them, and they look great. So I'm definitely a fan of PVB. A few things in here are not PVB. The inner bits are just Pro PLA, which this is where I am going to have to set down the mic for a moment because I need both hands. There is an inside to this. So as you can see, this was actually built to hold stuff. And I very much made it because as a cosplayer, I frequently find myself in costumes with no pockets, with no way to carry my belongings, nowhere to put a phone or ID or a wallet or sanity. So I thought, why not design something that I can actually carry my stuff in whilst I'm in costume? So it is fully usable as a handbag. It is a little awkward for things that are hard and round like this because it kind of rolls around in there. But it absolutely works. And it is, like I said before, it is fully 3D printed, and that includes this button mechanism, which was probably actually the most difficult part of the build. Makes a nice click when you close it. And the fact that it is actually a functional button being fully 3D printed is no small feat. Tolerances of 3D prints are not necessarily the easiest thing. With that being said, because I imagine there's a few 3D printing nerds out there in the audience, most of the prints, the large prints, were all done on a heavily modified CR10S Pro V2, which has a Hemera direct drive extruder and a Volcano hot end printed with a 0.6 millimeter nozzle. So a little bit faster. I could have gone with a larger nozzle, but then I wouldn't have gotten this small layer height. So again, I wanted smooth. So we went with a 0.2 millimeter layer. The button pieces and all of the internal mechanisms for the button were actually printed on my Prusa Mark IV, which I absolutely do rate, by the way, so that I could get more precision for those parts. But other than that, most of it was done on the CR10, which this is the full XY size for it. You cannot actually go bigger than this. This was maxed out. The smaller Pokeball pieces were also printed on the Mark IV, which again is very nice and clean. But for the electronics, because that is why we're here, this is being driven by a wonderful Ben Hankey Pixel Blaze, which had basically made this project possible because I imagine that I would have probably given up on the full three-dimensional pixel mapping without the help of the Pixel Blaze interface. Because this is, in fact, and this is where I can just take off the strap, which I also made. Hold it up. It is fully three-dimensional. It is not a two-dimensional map that has been stretched onto a sphere. There are no seams in the animation. It is fully seamless, and that was very much the dream with this project, which actually happened, so yay. Also, while I'm here, charging port on the bottom for charging on the go. It uses 4 18650 lithium ions that are sat in a really nice DF robot charging PCB. It's actually quite nice and versatile and does allow me to actually charge the batteries on the fly. I don't have to take them out to charge them. But the batteries and the Pixel Blaze all live at the very bottom of the ball, and you can kind of see underneath the crash space sticker There's the enclosure down there that actually just twists and lifts out. And you can swap out the batteries, change out the microcontroller. All of the lights themselves are actually sandwiched between the inner layer and the outer layer. So you can't exactly access them anymore, but fortunately, they all seem to be fine. It's 535 LEDs in there. And yes, I did count because I had to map them. They are strips. They are not individuals. They are strips. It is basically a 60 LED a meter strip. They're 4 millimeters wide, so I believe they're 35/35s. And they were a treasure to find because I actually got them from strips that were encased in silicone and looked much bigger and turned out to have tiny little strips inside. So I harvested those for this. And I have lots more. I have video and more photos online on my Instagram particularly, and eventually on my website as well, showing what the internal what it looked like basically before the outer shell went on. So you can kind of see a little bit more of the process of building this because it was immense. This took many months. But I would hazard a guess that it has been worth it because unlike some projects which you spend a lot of time on and you plan a lot and they just don't quite go the way you want them to, I'm actually very happy to say that this might be the first project I've ever done that has worked. It's just kind of worked. So I'm very, very happy to have it here with me today. This flew all the way over from London, England with me, like in my carry-on because I didn't trust baggage handlers with this. Yeah, I'm really excited to be able to show it off here amongst a bunch of like-minded folk who actually like to know the nitty-gritty of this thing. Before I go, because I know I didn't necessarily say everything, I would love to answer questions. If people have specific questions that I haven't answered, I would love to answer them if I have time left. Any questions? Yes. That's a great question, actually. So for the little ball, I used a vapor smoothing chamber. Polymaker Cell, basically a little machine. Sorry, I am stuck. Oh no. There we go. Yeah, I got there in the end. They sell a machine called the Polisher, which is admittedly quite expensive, and I imagine folks here could probably make something similar for less. But it does work if you've got the money and you don't want to fuss with it. But it is small. So something like this is great for it. For the big one, because I knew this wasn't going to work for, the Polisher wouldn't work for that, I actually applied it by hand. I basically got nitrile gloves, a spray bottle of IPA, and I would basically spritz down and I would just kind of hand smooth it one area at a time. I would then let it kind of sit for a little while until it was not tacky anymore, and I would do it again. And I basically did this until I reached a kind of a surface finish I was okay with. Not the fastest for these large things, but it's totally doable. You don't have to do it with a vapor smoother. You can just do this by hand. My only warning would say to just take it slow, because my first couple attempts, I just doused it, just got real slap happy with it and just poured kind of IPA all over it. And again, that whole it melts with IPA, it really did not go nice. Now, mind you, this is also going to be a problem specifically with these prints because they are thin. They aren't like thick layered prints. If you have a print that's not, 2 millimeters thick and you can do more walls in it, you're probably less likely to have an issue. For this, it was challenging. But yeah, take it slow and be patient. The results are worth it, I think. Any other questions? Yes. Yes. Yeah, no, so I have not done any, like you could, absolutely. You could put like a lacquer. You could put something on this to seal it. I didn't because I'm lazy. I did genuinely, I was set up to do so. I had some 2K clear coat ready to go, and then I was like, I'm tired, so I didn't. So 100%, if you spelt your alcoholic drink on this, it would be gross, and it would go sticky. and I would be very unhappy about that. So yeah, no, it absolutely doesn't, like, it's not like a one-time thing. You can actually process it again and again and again. It doesn't stop being responsive to alcohol. So yeah, absolutely, don't spill your drink on it. Anyone else? I think it's lunchtime. Thank you.
Thanks very much. That wraps it up. It is just exactly lunchtime. See you guys soon.